Cities covered in giant webs, millions of locusts turning the land into a desert, armies of toads taking over entire neighborhoods, and giant snails destroying homes. This is not a horror movie, but a reality that thousands of people have already faced. In this issue, we'll look at some of the creepiest cases of animals out of control. There is a place where swimming in the ocean is like playing a deadly lottery. This place is Réunion Island, a French territory in the Indian Ocean. The waters surrounding it have turned into a kingdom of sharks. Since the beginning of the 21st century, there have been more than 50 shark attacks on people, many of them fatal. Several factors have contributed to this invasion. A ban on shark culling, combined with changes in the marine ecosystem, has led to a sharp increase in their population. But the most alarming change is in their behavior. The sharks have become more aggressive, unafraid of humans, and even hunt dangerously close to shore. The real catastrophe unfolded between the year 2000 and the year 2020, when the number of attacks skyrocketed. Tourists and locals alike were terrified to step into the water. In response, the government imposed strict measures, swimming bans, special patrols, and even protective nets around beaches. But none of it proved truly effective. The sharks adapted, tearing through the nets and continuing their attacks. Surfers suffered the most from these encounters, as the sight of a surfboard on the water seemed to attract predators. Some attacks even occurred in shallow waters. Survivors shared chilling stories of sharks relentlessly pursuing them. Réunion has become one of the most dangerous islands in the world. Scientists are still trying to understand what triggered this surge in aggression, but one thing is certain: the sharks now rule these waters. However, on the other side of the planet, another terrifying force lurks, one that can cover entire cities in a dense, suffocating blanket. In Australia, Brazil, and even the United States, eerie phenomena sometimes unfold. Events that seem ripped straight from a horror movie. Without warning, the sky darkens, and homes, trees, and streets become engulfed in a thick blanket of silk. This is not fiction. It is a terrifying reality that some regions have already experienced. One of the most unsettling incidents occurred in Australia in the year 2012. After heavy rains, millions of spiders began a mass migration. They used a technique known as ballooning, releasing thin strands of silk into the air and allowing the wind to carry them for miles. As a result, entire fields and homes were coated in a ghostly web. People would wake up in the morning, step outside, and find their world draped in shimmering white threads. The problem is that these invasions bring not only discomfort, but real danger. Some of these spiders are venomous, and their bites can have serious consequences. In Brazil, a similar event occurred in the year 2015, when thousands of spiders filled the sky, terrifying local residents. People were afraid to go outside, and inside their homes they found dozens, sometimes even hundreds, of these creatures lurking. Scientists link these outbreaks to climate change. Heavy rains and flooding force spiders to flee rising waters, using their silk as parachutes. But for people, this turns into a living nightmare. And yet, spiders are not the only creatures capable of driving humans from their own homes. In some regions, snakes do not just coexist with people, they take over entire households. Imagine stepping into your bathroom only to see a snake slithering out of the toilet, or waking up in the morning to find a massive reptile coiled up beneath your bed. For some people, this is not a nightmare. It is their terrifying reality. In Australia, India, Thailand, and even the United States, snake infestations have become a serious problem. In certain regions of Florida, the python population has spiraled out of control to the point that specialized teams are dispatched to capture them. These snakes have overrun swamps, prey on alligators, and even find their way into homes. But the most chilling case occurred in Indonesia, where an entire village fell under siege by snakes. As deforestation destroyed their natural habitat, the snakes began seeking new shelter inside people's homes. Locals found them lurking in closets, curled up in beds, and even inside cooking pots. Several people were attacked, forcing authorities to evacuate part of the settlement. What caused this invasion? The answer is simple. Human activity is destroying the natural environments of these reptiles, forcing them to seek warmth and food in populated areas. While smaller species may only cause unease, massive anacondas and pythons pose a direct and deadly threat. But if snakes can lurk in the shadows and strike from hiding, the next creature comes in overwhelming swarms, devouring everything in its path. It may sound like a scene from a biblical plague, but this is a chilling reality. Massive locust swarms, numbering in the millions, can wipe out entire crops within hours, leaving behind nothing but barren land. Such infestations have been recorded across Africa, India, and even South America. One of the most devastating outbreaks occurred in Africa in the year 2019, when an enormous swarm consumed thousands of acres of farmland. People stepped outside to see the sky darken, not with storm clouds, but with millions of insects blocking out the sun. Within mere hours, everything around them was reduced to a wasteland. Locusts travel at speeds of up to 20 miles per hour and can cover hundreds of miles in a single day. Their numbers grow at an exponential rate, making them nearly impossible to contain. Some countries resort to chemical pesticides, while others deploy flocks of birds in a desperate attempt to curb their spread. For local farmers, such an invasion is more than just a disaster. It is the destruction of their livelihoods. They are left without food, without income, and governments are often forced to declare a state of emergency. But while locusts ravage agricultural lands, the next wave of invaders marches straight into cities, behaving as though humans are merely visitors in their world. Are toads harmless? Even cute creatures? Not in Australia, where an army of these amphibians has waged war on the local ecosystem. It all started when humans themselves introduced cane toads to the country, hoping they would help control agricultural pests. But the experiment spiraled out of control. The toads reproduced at an astonishing rate, swelling their numbers into the millions. They devoured everything in their path: insects, small animals, and even other toads. Their toxic skin makes them deadly to predators, leaving them with virtually no natural enemies. Today, some regions of Australia are quite literally overrun with toads. People find them inside their homes, in their cars, on the streets, everywhere. And as their numbers continue to surge, getting rid of them becomes an increasingly difficult battle. But there are creatures capable of unleashing an even greater nightmare, ones that creep into every corner of human dwellings. What could be more unsettling than a few rats scurrying through a dark alley? Only thousands of them, moving in a relentless wave, devouring everything in their path. In some parts of the world, this is not a rare occurrence. Rats have been known to overrun entire neighborhoods, forcing people to flee. One of the most terrifying examples of this took place in India. In the Bihar region, mass rat infestations occur periodically. When their population reaches a critical threshold, something resembling a military invasion begins. They destroy crops, raid food storage facilities, and invade homes, gnawing through anything they can sink their teeth into. But this is not just an Indian problem. In New York City, the rat population has surged so dramatically in recent decades that authorities have been forced to develop specialized control programs. From subways to restaurants and even high-end apartments, rats are everywhere. In some areas, they have lost all fear of humans, boldly running through the streets in broad daylight as if they own the city. The biggest challenge is that rats are exceptionally intelligent and adapt to nearly any environment. Eradicating them completely is impossible, and any control measures provide only temporary relief. In some cases, infestations have even driven entire villages to relocate. And if rats seem terrifying, the next city is under the rule of creatures that are far bigger and far deadlier. When we think of bears, we imagine vast wilderness, dense forests, and towering mountains. But in some places, these massive predators live side by side with humans, and it is far from a peaceful coexistence. In certain towns and villages, bears have become the true rulers, leaving people with little chance of living a normal life. One of the most notorious cases occurred in the Russian settlement of Tilachiki. In the early 2000s, the number of bears wandering into populated areas surged dramatically. They roamed the streets, raided trash bins, and even peeked into windows. People were terrified to step outside, as an encounter with one of these formidable neighbors could be fatal. Similar stories unfold in Canada and Alaska, where entire communities sometimes find themselves under siege. Bears prowl between houses, break into cars, and force local authorities to establish special patrols. The reason? Climate change and dwindling food supplies in the wild. These predators are not drawn to human settlements out of curiosity. They come out of sheer hunger. But what can you do when a massive bear takes up residence near your home? Some communities have resorted to building electrified fences, setting traps, and even evacuating altogether. However, even these measures do not always work, as bears quickly learn how to bypass obstacles. And while bears invade towns in search of food, there exists another force, one that is a merciless wave of destruction. They are so organized and lethal that resisting them is nearly impossible. Ants may seem harmless, but some species can turn human life into an absolute nightmare. Enormous colonies of aggressive ants invade homes, destroy crops, and even attack people. One of the most dangerous species is the fire ant, originally from South America, but now firmly established in the United States. Not only do they deliver painful stings, but they also attack in highly coordinated groups. If hundreds of these insects swarm a person or an animal, the consequences can be fatal. However, the truly terrifying cases occur in Africa, where nomadic driver ants march in massive columns. They attack anything in their path, devouring small animals, birds, and even larger prey. Local communities are forced to burn grass and dig trenches to stop these relentless invaders. There have even been reports of ant swarms completely overrunning houses, forcing residents to flee. Their bites cause intense pain and allergic reactions, and their colonies can number in the millions. But while ants are a force of nature, the next creature is terrifying for a completely different reason. It possesses intelligence, strength, and cunning, and most disturbingly, it has no fear of humans. In India, Thailand, and parts of Africa, monkeys are no longer the cute creatures that people once enjoyed feeding by hand. In some cities, they have become a genuine menace, attacking passers-by, stealing food, and even taking over buildings. In India, entire neighborhoods have been overrun by gangs of macaques, making it nearly impossible for locals to leave their homes safely. These monkeys work together in groups, raiding shops, breaking into refrigerators, and, in more extreme cases, attacking people to snatch their belongings. One of the most shocking incidents occurred in the early 2000s when a group of aggressive monkeys stormed a government building. They not only stole important documents, but also wreaked havoc in offices, even attacking employees. The situation in Thailand is no better. In the city of Lopburi, monkeys act as if they own the place. They leap across rooftops, fight over territory, and will aggressively confront tourists who refuse to give them food. Dealing with them is no easy task, as monkeys are highly intelligent and adapt quickly to human attempts at control. But if you think only mammals are capable of creating chaos, the next creatures may seem even more nightmarish. When people think of snails, they usually imagine slow-moving, harmless creatures crawling over damp grass after a rain. But some snails have the power to turn entire cities into biological disaster zones. These mollusks don't just invade territories, they bring deadly threats to everything around them. One of the most terrifying species is the African giant snail. Growing up to 10 inches in length, these creatures have incredibly tough shells and an astounding survival rate. Their reproductive ability is even more alarming. Each snail can lay up to 1,000 eggs per season, causing their population to explode at a terrifying rate. That's why, when they were accidentally introduced to the United States, they spread with frightening speed. Florida has suffered the most from these invaders. First detected in the mid-20th century, they made a shocking comeback decades later. Their numbers grew so rapidly that authorities had to allocate millions of dollars to control their spread. These snails even damage buildings by eating plaster and concrete. Since their shells require large amounts of calcium, they literally scrape it off the walls of houses, slowly eroding entire neighborhoods. But structural damage isn't the worst part. The real danger comes from the deadly parasites they carry. African giant snails are known hosts of the rat lungworm, a parasite that can cause meningitis in humans. Simply touching a snail or coming into contact with its mucus can lead to infection, resulting in severe neurological complications. Residents in affected areas report these creatures invading homes, crawling into cars, and devastating gardens and farmland. In some cases, their population becomes so overwhelming that entire districts are placed under biological quarantine. To combat these giants, authorities have tried everything, from chemical treatments to large-scale extermination campaigns. But these snails possess extraordinary resilience. They can burrow underground, enter a dormant state, and survive harsh conditions, only to re-emerge when least expected. But if snails take over territories slowly, the next creatures attack with such speed and force that stopping them is nearly impossible. When we think of animal infestations, cats are probably the last creatures that come to mind. They are symbols of home and comfort, not destruction. Yet, in some parts of the world, cats have become an ecological disaster, wiping out native species and taking over entire regions. Australia is one of the hardest hit countries. Domestic cats were introduced by humans, but with no natural predators to keep them in check. Their population exploded. These feline hunters quickly adapted to the wild, preying on local wildlife. They have decimated rare species of birds, reptiles, and mammals, many of which exist nowhere else on Earth. The Australian government has classified feral cats as a national threat. Their numbers are estimated in the millions, and they continue to multiply at an alarming rate. Some areas are overrun, forcing farmers and conservationists to take drastic measures, including large-scale capture and culling programs. But Australia isn't the only place facing this crisis. In the United States, particularly in Hawaii and Florida, feral cats have caused severe declines in endangered bird populations. They don't just hunt for survival, they kill for sport. Studies show that even well-fed cats continue attacking wildlife, making them especially dangerous to fragile ecosystems. Despite efforts to control their numbers, feral cats remain difficult to catch and resistant to sterilization programs. In some regions, they have become an unstoppable plague. If left unchecked, they could permanently disrupt the natural balance. But while cats threaten small animals, the next danger lurks beneath the water's surface. A creature straight out of a nightmare, and an encounter with it can be deadly. When we think of deadly aquatic creatures, sharks, piranhas, or giant squid usually come to mind. However, some of the most dangerous and monstrous fish lurk in rivers and lakes, growing to incredible sizes and posing a serious threat. One of the most terrifying cases involves the Goliath tigerfish, a massive predatory species related to the taimen found in African rivers. This monster can grow over 5 feet long and possesses razor-sharp teeth, capable of slicing through bone. In certain regions of the Congo, fishermen refuse to enter the water out of fear of these ferocious hunters, which have been known to attack humans. In South America, another aquatic giant roams the waters, the pirarucu. This enormous fish can reach 10 feet in length and weigh hundreds of pounds. It is so powerful that it leaps out of the water to snatch prey, including birds and small mammals. In the Amazon, there have been reports of these fish ramming and capsizing boats, creating havoc for unsuspecting fishermen. But perhaps the most disturbing of them all is the snakehead fish, a creature that can survive on land. Not only does it crawl across the ground, but it also hunts other animals and takes over entire ecosystems. In the United States, the snakehead is considered an invasive species, and authorities actively encourage its eradication due to its aggressive nature and rapid spread. These aquatic monsters serve as a reminder that danger isn't limited to the land. It can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary river or lake. However, the next threat is even more terrifying. It comes straight from the wild and has the power to turn entire cities into uninhabitable wastelands. When a dog becomes stray, it learns to survive on its own. But when too many dogs roam the streets, they begin to form packs, turning into skilled hunters. In some cities around the world, feral dog gangs have taken over entire neighborhoods, terrorizing both people and animals. Russia, India, and Romania are among the countries hardest hit by this problem. In certain areas, the number of stray dogs outnumbers the human population. These dogs organize into packs, hunting like wolves, preying on cats, birds, and sometimes even humans. In Romania, the crisis reached terrifying levels in the early 2000s. Packs of stray dogs began attacking children. By the time authorities attempted to intervene, their numbers had grown too large to control. The situation in India is even more dire. Hundreds of dog attacks are reported every year, with some resulting in fatalities. Beyond their aggression, these animals are carriers of rabies, making even a single bite potentially deadly. But the most disturbing fact, dogs are highly adaptable. In some areas, they have started hunting larger prey, including livestock. They work together, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And while dogs pose a visible physical threat, the next danger is far more insidious. It is so small that it can go unnoticed until it's too late. At first glance, mosquitoes seem like nothing more than annoying insects, leaving behind itchy bites. But in reality, they are the deadliest creatures on the planet, killing more people than any predator ever could. Malaria, dengue fever, Zika virus. These are just a few of the lethal diseases spread by mosquitoes. In some parts of the world, their bites are not just irritating, they are potentially fatal, fueling outbreaks that claim thousands of lives every year. In Africa, malaria-carrying mosquitoes are one of the leading causes of child mortality. In Brazil, dengue fever epidemics have only worsened in recent decades. Even in the United States and Europe, infections from Zika virus have been on the rise, particularly in the southern states like Florida and Texas. But the most terrifying phenomenon, mosquito swarms. In some areas, their numbers surge so dramatically that they become moving clouds of death. During summer in Siberia, these insects can drain entire herds of reindeer dry, leaving lifeless bodies behind. Humans living in these regions must wear full protective suits just to avoid being bitten. Governments around the world are fighting back, deploying pesticides, genetic modifications, and large-scale eradication programs. But despite these efforts, mosquitoes remain one of the greatest ongoing threats to humanity. Yet while mosquitoes kill slowly, the next threat brings pure destruction. In a single moment, the land itself can turn into a living nightmare, overrun by horrifying creatures. When people think of turtles, they picture slow-moving, harmless creatures basking in the sun. However, on Ascension Island in the Atlantic Ocean, they have become an overwhelming force, disrupting the ecosystem and taking over vast stretches of land. Once home to a diverse range of native species, the island has been overrun by green sea turtles, whose growing population is rapidly altering the landscape. Their nesting grounds now dominate the beaches, pushing out other wildlife and making some coastal areas nearly unusable for humans. Although sea turtles are not aggressive, their sheer numbers are wreaking havoc on the environment. As they consume vegetation, they accelerate soil erosion and damage coastlines. Their rapid reproduction makes it nearly impossible to control their spread, and their increasing presence is reshaping the delicate balance of the island's ecosystem. While sea turtles are a passive force of change, their more aggressive relatives pose a direct threat to humans. In the southern United States, particularly in Florida and Louisiana, alligator snapping turtles have been reported attacking people, inflicting severe injuries with their powerful jaws. These creatures can weigh over 100 pounds, and their bite is strong enough to break human bones. They are highly territorial and will lash out if provoked, making them some of the most dangerous reptiles in freshwater environments. Even more concerning are the giant freshwater turtles found in India and Southeast Asia. Their numbers have surged due to environmental imbalances, allowing them to dominate entire water systems and push out native species. As their population continues to grow, they reshape ecosystems, altering food chains and displacing other aquatic life. The rise of these turtle invasions serves as a reminder that nature is not always under human control. Whether it's turtles taking over beaches, sharks turning oceans into hunting grounds, or wild animals asserting dominance over cities, the natural world has a way of reclaiming what was once its own. Numbering in the millions can wipe out entire crops within hours.